Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Tehillim Treasures, where we will plumb the beautiful depths and treasures of Tehillim from the very beginning of Tehillim to the end of David HaMelech's masterpiece. This episode is brought to you by Chazaq. Chazaq is an organization that helps public school children become Shomrei Torah mitzvahs, exposes them to the beauty of Torah and mitzvahs. Imagine for a moment you're standing in a store or you're walking down the street. You know the neighbor. You've known them for many years. You see their children riding their bike in the driveway. And you know they're Jewish. But now there's someone who can help them take the next step. And that is Chazaq, with countless programs after school and other wonderful programs to help expose them to the beauty of Yiddishkeit. If you know someone or know someone that knows someone that can help these children, then please email at psty@chazaq.org. This episode is also brought to you by Chickens for Shabbos. Chickens for Shabbos is exactly what it says it is, plus more. There are many people. There are Melamdim's children. There are Agunis. There are Grushis. There are families that do not have simple essentials for Shabbos and for life. Whatever they need, Chickens for Shabbos is there to provide. Please do your utmost to help in any way you can. We now begin with the next two kapitluch, Perek Tzadi Gimel and Perek Tzadi Daled, the 93rd and the 94th chapters of David HaMelech's Timeless Treasures. Hashem Malach Geus Lavesh. This chapter, which is recited after Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbos, on Friday night after L'cha Daidi, is also recited on Friday as the Shir Shel Yom. And the Pasuk says, and again, I'm sorry, I just in recording this right near Shabbos, so I want to get a little bit of the feel of Shabbos. Mikoel es mayim rabim adirim mishmereyom adir b'amoroim Hashem. More than the waters of many waters, mightier than the waters of the sea. You are mighty on high, Hashem. And this is referring to the Mayim of Torah. Ein Mayim el Torah, when we refer to Mayim, we are referring to the water that rushes through, the water, the Mayim Chayim, the water of life, the water of Torah. A lot of people have all different types of wonderful Shabbatons and sessions and symposiums to try to discover the truth of God's existence. The greatest truth of God's existence is Torah. And when we learn Torah, something as basic but as fundamental as a piece of Gemara that you would teach to a fifth grader, even though it doesn't have the pizzazz of these sessions where we're discovering the truth of God, but the Gemara speaks for itself. Hashem's Torah speaks for itself, and that is the greatest proof that the Torah exists. Through the thunderous sounds of one's Torah study, Adir b'Amorim Hashem. You want to know how Hashem is so Adir, he's so awesome, he's so great? From the Koiles Mayim Rabim Adirim, from the awesome sounds of Torah. And there was an event recently, the Adirei Torah event. The Adirei Torah event was an event that took place in Wells Fargo Arena in Philadelphia. It was quite simply the most awesome display of Kavod HaTorah that I, in my 54 years on this earth, have ever experienced. And I don't think I'm alone in feeling this way. I highly recommend that you try to watch a video. Perhaps you can see it on Torah Anytime or Chazaq. Try to find the video of the event, to see the B'nai Torah, to see them dancing and singing together, and how everyone just was in awe of those who learn Torah, very often b'mesiras nefesh, with tremendous sacrifice. In fact, across all of the arena, throughout the arena, there was not one advertisement. There was not one symbol, logo, emblem, nothing other than signs that spoke about Chashivas HaTorah. The young man, our greatest treasure, the one who learns Torah, is the greatest treasure of the Jewish people. Mikolos mayim rabim. But the truth is that if you wanted to see perhaps even a greater display of Torah, all you have to do is walk in to a beis medrash in a yeshiva. And the sounds that reverberate throughout the walls, the sounds of Torah, the battle that goes on between a chavrusa and his friend, fighting about pshat and learning, hollering and screaming at each other. On the surface, you'd look at it and you'd say, why are those guys so angry with each other? What's wrong with them? But the pasuk says, "Esva'ei besufa," there will be love that comes about that argument. That argument is not an argument of dissension. It's not an argument of machlokes. It's an argument that is totally l'shem shamayim. It's an argument that brings great joy to Hashem. And that's what we have to remember. When I was learning in Telz Yeshiva, there was such drama in the beis medrash. And I'll tell you who I saw it from. I'll tell you who I witnessed the mikolos mayim rabim adirim that I grew up witnessing. It was a battle that was waged in the beis medrash between Rabbi Yechiel Cohen, the great tzaddik and mashgiach and masmid of Telz, and the rest of the beis medrash, whoever dared to take him on. And he, his entire life, learned with such hasmada. It's such an inspiration that next time you see somebody from Telz Yeshiva, ask them and they will tell you, and it will just flow out of them. Rabbi Yechiel Cohen was the lion. And he had the most creative discussions. He wanted to know, is the Chazaq a washing machine or is it a dryer? And then he would explain why it's perhaps one or the other. But there's one story I want to tell you about Rabbi Yechiel that I love. My son was getting a ride with Rabbi Morty Simon from Cleveland, Ohio. And they were driving Rabbi Yechiel back from Telz Yeshiva in Wickliffe, Ohio, to Cleveland Heights. It's about a 20-minute drive. In the snow, it could be a long, long trip. You know, you're going maybe 10, 20 miles an hour. And normally, when you're on the road with a gadol, they won't talk to you in learning because they want you to concentrate on driving, and that's what's important. And a person has to be safe. But Rabbi Yechiel Cohen, to him, life was Torah itself. And so my son told me, he was in the car, and Rabbi Yechiel, and I'm smiling because he was just so full of Torah's Chaim. And he was talking and learning with Rabbi Simon, and Rabbi Simon's trying to drive the car, and it's a snowstorm, and he's trying. And while everybody else would have said, you just concentrate, Rabbi Yechiel, after he's trying to hammer home a point, says, Simon, get your eyes off the road and listen to me. And that's what it means to have a chiyus, a life of Torah. He didn't mean chas v'shalom that he should crash. He meant to tell him, this is life. This is life. And so that's the greatest proof that there's a Rebbeinu Shalom, that his children learn Torah. Learn Torah. Add a little bit to your learning, and you'll see it's the most precious time of your day. We now move on to Kapitel Tzadi Daled. Tzadi Daled is Kel Nekomos Hashem, Kel Nekomos Sefia. Once again, another kapitel that is a Shir Shel Yom. This one, pretty long, is the Shir Shel Yom of Wednesday. And in the 94th chapter of Tehillim, Moshe Rabbeinu says, Ashrei Hageva Asher Te'asrenu Ka U'Miteiros Ka Salam. That praiseworthy is the man whom God disciplines and whom you teach your Torah. The Gemara tells us the story of a Rebbe Lozer who became sick. And Rabbi Yechiel went to visit him and asked him if his Yisurim were dear to him, since when accepted with love, the affliction brings a person great reward. Rabbi Lozer said, Lo yehein v'lo yischaram. I don't want the affliction, and I don't want the reward. Keep the reward. Rabbi Yechiel offered his hand to Rabbi Lozer and lifted him up. And somehow, miraculously, by touching his hand, he was totally healed. Beautiful Gemara. And the truth is that this is how a person is able to rid himself of the affliction. And it seems that if we would tell Hashem that we will do without the reward that comes along, as long as we don't have to endure the suffering, we can get rid of it. Well, is that true? Is it true that we can just rid ourselves of the affliction? And perhaps more importantly, how does one deal with Yisurim, with suffering? How do we make it bearable? How do we make it tolerable? Because everybody suffers. And I think it's important for us to know that every person has their own madrega. This is not meant to say that somebody's in the hospital and they should either embrace Yisurim or push it away. Every person has to know themselves. Nobody wants to suffer, and very, very often people suffer and they feel they can't deal with it. And they need Rahmanus and they need compassion and mercy. We have to know that sometimes a person has to be a tzaddik in order to be able to reach these madregas. Chafetz Chaim brings a mashal to explain. He said there was a city that had a prison, and the prison was a tremendous facility where there were numerous guards and there was a chief warden. They were employed there, but weeks and months went by. There was no crime in the area. Those of you living in New York, forgive me, but such places do exist. As such, the prison remained empty, and the warden began to worry that the district supervisors are going to come, and they're going to see there's nobody there. And if there's no prisoners, guess what? He's out of a job. So he thought of a plan. And he walked around the city, found a pauper. He had nothing to lose. He said, listen, why don't you come here? I'll offer you a deal you can't refuse. Make yourself look like a prisoner. And we'll give you food, shelter, clothing, whatever you need. Okay, the poor man wanted to know, what will I get? And the warden said, you know what, I'll even give you some liquor. Okay, over the next few weeks, the trouble began in the village. They arrested a few of the troublemakers, and the prison started to fill up. And no longer in need of the services of the poor man, they threw him out on the street. After some time, the poor man went to the tavern. He became completely shicker. And he comes out, stumbles out of the tavern onto the street. He broke a few windows. He started up with some of the passers-by. The police grabbed him and they threw him in prison. And he gets in there and he says, all right, where's my liquor? Where's my drinks? Otherwise, I'm not staying here. I said, have you lost your mind? They said, when we first threw you into prison, we needed you. Now we don't need you. Zot the Chafetz Chaim, Rebbe Lozer was a tzaddik. He did not deserve any of the suffering. He accepted it upon himself, and therefore, he was healed. He was similar to the pauper in the mashal who didn't need the prison. But you know what? Sometimes we have faults and shortcomings, and we need the suffering to keep us on the straight and narrow. And we don't have the upper hand. We don't get to choose. Halavai, we should be zoicha to be able to embrace it with understanding and with the mercy of Hashem. But realize whatever a person's situation, try to embrace your situation, do the best you can, and Emir Hashem, that Yisurin will serve you well. It will be a reward forever and ever. Until next time, Sei gesund.